Dear students, welcome to online class arranged by National University. Today I'll be discussing on the course from Introduction to Prose, and our today's discussion topic is Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. Dear students, as you can see on the screen that we'll be discussing from Introduction to Prose, and course code is 211107. I'm Muhammad Ishtiaq Hassan, Assistant Professor, Department of English at Dhaka City College. And this text is very important, and this is also an interesting text to read. Let us go on our today's main topic. So as you see on the screen that these are the three wise men, and you see that there is the baby here. The baby is Jesus Christ, and these three wise men brought gifts for Jesus Christ. And the title of our text is The Gift of the Magi. Magi were the three wise men of the East who brought valuable gifts for the baby Jesus Christ at Bethlehem. Now we move on to our main discussion. Let us see at a glance what we will cover in our today's discussion. The definition of short story, key facts of Gift of the Magi, summary of the text, characters, themes, discussion of the text, questions, and summary of the lecture. Let's move on to our main topic of discussion, that is the definition of short story. So from the definition of short story, you can understand that it's a fictional work of prose that is shorter in length than a novel. And we can also see some of the elements of the short story. Edgar Allan Poe, an American short story writer, in his essay, The Philosophy of Composition, said that a short story should be read in one sitting, anywhere from a half hour to 2 hours. In contemporary fiction, a short story can range from 1,000 to 20,000 words. A short story presents one aspect of the life of a character. It could be an incident, an event, a description of a feeling, or even a simple act. A short story can also impact a reader and even inspire them. Moreover, in a short story, the characters also share their innermost thoughts, feelings, motives, their emotions, and their different ideas. Short stories tend to be less complex than novels. Usually, a short story will focus on only one incident, has a single plot, a single setting, a limited number of characters, and covers a short period of time. So we can easily understand about the short story. Now we move on to other elements of a short story. So what are the 5 elements of a short story? Characters, setting, plot, conflict, and theme. So everything will be discussed in our discussion on the Gift of the Magi, and we'll also find these things in this short story. So these are the elements of a short story. In order to understand a short story, we need to understand these 5 elements. So let us see what are the 5 elements. The first one is character. A character is a person, or sometimes even an animal, who or which takes part in the action of a short story or other literary work. 1 or 2 main characters may be introduced, and they may be introduced without any full backstory. So the stories, the characters, we may not know about the previous life of the characters. The second one comes as setting. The setting of a short story is a time and place in which it happens. And we have also seen the time and the place of these texts happening. And we shall also explore these things in our next slides. Authors often use descriptions of landscape, scenery, buildings, seasons, or weather to provide a strong sense of setting. Next comes the plot. A plot is a series of events and characters, actions that relate to the central conflict. Short stories typically focus on a single plot instead of multiple subplots. So in a short story, we don't find a lot of plots, rather we find a single plot. And through the single plot, the writer wants to present a lot of things within this single plot, and the attention of the reader is attracted through a simple plot. But it might be a simple plot. There are other things which are very attractive to the readers. Another thing is the conflict. The conflict is a struggle between the two people or thing in a short story. So you will also find the conflict in this text. So the conflict will come when we will find that both of the characters cannot present their gifts, because they presented their gifts, but their gifts are useless because they didn't find any way to give their gifts. Uh, Last comes the theme. This is the central idea or belief in a short story. While short stories of the past often revolved around a central theme or moral lesson, today it is common to find stories with ambiguous endings. So ambiguous endings in a sense that the idea is given to the readers that they can take the decision and that they interpret the text in their own way. The writer writes the short story, but this is the reader who actually takes the ending, how the ending will go and what will happen next. So we find that it opens open-ended reading and suggests a more complex understanding of reality of human behavior. So it's a fictional writing about imagined events and characters, and it is also different from poetry as it doesn't depend on verse, meters, or rhyme. And there's some difference between novel and short story. Novels are another example of fictional prose and are much longer than short stories. Some short stories, however, can be quite long. If a short story is a long one, for example, 50 to 100 pages, we can call it a novella. Edgar Allan Poe was a great writer and made many contributions to the works of literature. He is known as the father of the American short story and also the father of the detective story. So these are five elements of short story, and all these elements are present in our discussion that is centered on Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. So before starting going on to the text, it is better to know some of the key facts of the story. We can see that the full title of the text is The Gift of the Magi, time of writing 1905, place of writing New York City. It was published in 1905. Its genre is short story or parable. Setting a city probably around the beginning of the 20th century. It is in New York. Climax, Della opens are present and finds the poem. Point of view, third person omniscient with a focus on Della's perspective. So we just knew some of the key facts from the story, and we'll explore these things in our next slides. And for the students, it is better to know the importance of the elements of short stories, because these elements will be discussed in this text. So in the very beginning, we just notice a picture, the three men, and we'd like to know about them. So the first question arises about who are the Magi. So who are the Magi? The Magi were the three wise men of the East who brought valuable gifts for Jesus Christ. So what did they bring with them, and what was their gifts? So we can see that they present Jesus Christ with gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and they kneel before him in worship and adoration. This presentation of gifts originated the Christian tradition of exchanging gifts on Christmas. Though biblical scholars continue to debate the specific symbolism of the Magi gifts, they are commonly thought to represent Christ's dominion over both the mortal and the divine realms. With the gold representing the earthly wealth of kings, the frankincense representing the sacrifice Christ would eventually make on behalf of humanity, and the myrrh representing his death after crucifixions. So the gifts had some impacts, had some significance. So for the students, I am telling it again. So the gold represents the earthly wealth of kings. Frankincense represents the sacrifice Christ would eventually make, and the myrrh represents his death after crucifixion. Now we move on to the summary of the text. The short story, The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry, likely takes place just before Christmas in the early 1900s. Most of the action is in the cheap apartment of Della and her husband, Jim. It is better to know about the writer. So we'd like to know about the writer. The name of the writer is O. Henry. His full name is, this is his pen name. O means Oliver Henry. And his full name is William Sidney Porter. He was born in 1862 and died in 1910. And he is better known by his pen name O. Henry. He was an American short story writer. Porter was born in Greensboro, North Carolina, and later moved to Texas in 1882. It was there that he met his wife, Ethel Estes, with whom he had 2 children. In 1902, after the death of his wife, Porter moved to New York, where he soon remarried. It was while he was in New York that Porter's most intensive writing period occurred, with Porter writing 381 short stories. Porter's work includes The Gift of the Magi, The Duplicity of Our Grapes, and The Ransom of Red Chief. His stories are known for their surprise endings and witty narration. Porter also wrote poetry and non-fiction. Let us know more about his life. William Sidney Porter spent his childhood in North Carolina, where he read voraciously and attended his aunt's elementary school. His uncle trained him to become a pharmacist at 19. At 20, he moved to Texas to work on a sheep ranch. Soon afterwards, he worked a number of jobs as a bank teller, draftsman, and journalist, all while writing on the side. Sometime after his first marriage to Ethel Estes, he began writing for the Houston Post, but he was arrested soon afterwards for embezzling funds at his previous bank position. He escaped to Honduras but returned to the United States when he learned that Estes died from tuberculosis. Porter spent the next 3 years in prison, where he wrote and published under various pseudonyms, the most popular one being with O. Henry. After his release from prison, Porter moved to New York City, where he wrote most of his short stories. He died in 1910 at age 47 from complications that likely arose from his drinking. So it is a sad story because he died at a very early age. And we now go back to the summary of the text. So we'll see the summary. And it is understood that the story takes place by O. Henry just before Christmas in the early 90s. Most of the actions are happening in the cheap apartment of Della and her husband Jim. So we see the summary of this text, and it is also found that how the 2 characters live their life. So it all happened that Della had only $1.87 saved to buy Jim a Christmas present. She decided to sell her long, beautiful hair for $20. She took her newfound wealth and bought Jim a fabulous platinum fob chain for the pocket watch that had been in his family for generations. She worried briefly what Jim would think of her short, close-cropped curls, but it was too late. Jim came home from work and gave her a strange look. Della assumed he didn't approve of her haircut, but she reassured him it was for a good reason. Jim told her that he didn't care what her hair looked like. Then he handed her the present that he bought for her to explain himself. He had purchased tortoise shell combs with jewel rims for her long tresses, which she no longer had. She replied that her hair would grow back quickly, so he did not need to worry. Then she wanted him to open his present. He unwrapped the watch chain and she asked if she could attach it to his watch. He replied that he sold the watch to buy her the hair combs. These gifts tie into the story of the wise men or magi who brought gifts to the newborn baby Jesus, which perhaps began the tradition of giving gifts at the Christmas. They too brought that their gifts are wise ones, whether the gifts are of use or not. The point is that these people sacrifice to give something to someone else, which means that they carry great value whether the receiver can actually use them or not. So we can easily understand the happenings in this text. So it's a 1905 short story by O. Henry about Jim and Della, an impoverished young couple who make sacrifice in order to buy each other meaningful Christmas gifts. So we see that Della sells her beautiful hair in order to buy a nice watch chain for Jim's watch. When Jim comes home, he reveals that he has sold his watch to buy lovely combs for Della's hair. Though Della and Jim's respective sacrifices have rendered their gifts functionally useless, they maintain their good humor and decide to save the fine gifts for a later time. So we see the sacrifices of these of the characters, but through their sacrifice, it is understood that their love for each other is more than any gift can prove. So in this text, we find two characters, that is Jim and Della. So the Jim and Della, they are the couple, and we can also see that Jim and Della had a great relationship. They are happy in their conjugal life, though they had some problems, economic problems they had. But apart from that, they are very happy with what they have. And if you see that uh, his full name is James Dillingham Young. He is Della's husband. Though he is only 22 years old, he is very thin and serious looking, troubled by poverty and burdened with the family. In spite of his circumstances, he has a happy and loving relationship with his wife. Together, they have turned their $8 a week apartment into a sanctuary of warmth and hope. Jim works long hours for minimal pay, but Della always greets him with an affectionate hug when he arrives home. In turn, Jim does not best to provide for Della, and he even willingly sacrifices his prized watch in order to buy Della a beautiful set of combs for her hair. Della compares Jim to the platinum watch chain by indicating that both possess quietness and value. Jim is a simple, hardworking man who forgoes ornamentation in favor of understated goodness. His physical circumstances are unimpressive, but his relationship with Della is warm and loving. Della is able to see his value despite his understated condition. So we can see that in spite of the poverty, they were happy, and Jim was a loving husband, and he always cared for her wife, and they had poverty, but they had peace in their mind. They had happiness in their mind. And we can also say that because of their good relationship, in spite of having poverty, they actually passed a good conjugal life. So on the other hand, we also see uh, Dilla, and Dilla is the main character or the protagonist here. Della Dillingham Young is a young housewife who lives in a small apartment in New York City with her husband Jim. Della has been carefully saving money in order to buy a Christmas gift for Jim, but she is dismayed to discover that she has only collected $1.87. So she has collected these $1.87 by bargaining with the butcher and the shopkeeper. So in spite of collecting a very small amount of money, she thinks that for uh, giving a good Christmas present, he thinks something new, and he thinks that she could sell her hair, and after selling, he could get some money. And we see that she goes to Mrs. Safrani, and she buys hair, and from that she gets money, and she gets $20, and she was happy to get the money. And it is also found that she had to sacrifice her long hair for buying a nice present for Jim. And this sacrifice of hair is also remarkable in a sense that she wanted to present a gorgeous gift to Jim. This represents a great sacrifice for Della, as her hair is the only valuable thing she owns. However, rather than confronting the loss of her hair with sadness or regret, Della instead uh, moves on rosy wings as she searches out the perfect gift for Jim. Her only worry in the aftermath of selling her hair is that Jim will no longer find her attractive, but she is quick to reassure that both of them that her hair grows awfully quick. So she thinks that Della might not love her, may not like her, but she also thinks in her mind that her hair will grow faster. The narrative follows her point of view. As such, readers are given access to her oftentimes emotions ranging from grief to joy to fear. Her feminine change of tears and wells in the aftermath of receiving the calms presents her idea that how she feels in the situation. However, though she is prone to outbursts of emotion, Della proves to be both resourceful and optimistic. After lamenting her meager savings, the small savings with which to purchase James' gift, she arrives at a creative solution of selling her hair. The narrator also emphasizes a bright and ardent spirit as she presents Jim with his new watch chain. Her smile by the realization that she cannot put her new forms to use just yet. Della loves him deeply, and her selfless decision to sacrifice her hair in order to buy him a gift at last, in the narrator's eyes, a wisdom on the biblical Magi. For the Dillingham Youngs, misfortune and poverty are temporary states, so they don't think about the misfortune or about their uh, problems in the family life, their poverty, but they actually always move beyond that. Though their gifts are functionally useless at present, Della knows that her hair will someday grow back, representing the young couple's shared hopes for the future, and they think that the better days will come in their life. So another thing we find that is the themes: love, generosity, sacrifice, and wealth. So let us see about these themes from this text. As we know that they had a great relationship and they loved each other profoundly despite their economic problem. And we also see that they both willingly sacrificed their most prized possessions in order to provide each other with nice gifts, highlighting the trump of love over greed or materialism. So his this text presents the love of the two couple, and it also tells the readers about the family relationship, the relationship between husband and wife. In the very beginning of our discussion, we talked in another class, that is the Cat in the Rain, the relationship between the two characters, uh, George and the wife, was not good. But in this text, the gift of the Magi, we find an a contrasting picture, that is their love for each other is very profound and they love each other very much. O. Henry contrasts the warmth that exists between Della and Jim with their bleak surroundings. His prose emphasizes the drabness of the world around them through such images as the grey cat walking a grey fence in a grey backyard. Their apartment does not beggar description, and both the mail slot and the door buzzer are broken. So it presents that their condition was not good, but we feel and we can see that their love is not broken. Rather, they are based on a strong foundation of mutual trust and respect. Although their home is shabby, Della's earnest desire to buy Jim a nice Christmas gift presents that their love for them is beyond description. And her relation after sacrificing her hair in order to buy him a platinum watch gives us the readers that she how much she loves him. Jim's reassurance that no haircut, shave, or shampoo could make him love any less comments the trump of love over material concerns. The young couple's physical and economic circumstances are subject to the changes wrought by time and fortune, but the love for one another is unassailable. The couple could have spent the holidays lamenting their circumstances and their inability to afford expensive gifts. Instead, Della has saved up pennies for months in the hopes of making Jim happy with a gift that presents how much she loves him. Her earnest effort and simple desire to make Jim happy highlight the ability of love to provide a source of hope and optimism. Now let us move on to our next theme, that is generosity. So we can see that how generous they were, and this is one of the important traits that the couple shares. The Gift of the Magi is a Christmas story, and it functions as a parable about both the nature of love and the true meaning of generosity. Della's earnest desire to buy a meaningful Christmas gift for Jim drives the plot of the story, and Jim's idea is presented in this text. And Jim is also, in a sense, of buying a gift for Della. Both Jim and Della give selflessly without expectation of getting anything. Their sole motivation is to make the other person happy, and we can see that they are they're trying heart and soul to make them happy. This combines with personal meaning in each of the gifts, conveys the story's moral that true generosity is both selfless and thoughtful. Della goes from every store in town for 2 hours before finding the perfect gift for Jim. She notes the similarities between the simple yet valuable watch chain and her understated but loving husband. So it is seen that she goes from one store to another store for finding a nice gift for him. She notes the similarities between the simple yet valuable watch chain and her understated but loving husband. The watch chain is not merely a shiny uh, thing, it represents Della's regard for Jim and the inherent value she finds in him. Similarly, the comms are not merely an extravagant things to impress Della. Instead, they represent Jim's commitment to Della and to their relationship. He willingly sells his most valuable possession, handed down from his father, in order to buy Della the comms, suggesting that for Jim, Della and their future family are the most important things in their life. We can see that the comms and the watch chain can also be read as promise for the future. Though the couple currently lives in difficult financial circumstances, both the comms and the watch chain are symbols of Della and Jim's optimism that their circumstances, their condition will change. They will find better days in their life. Ultimately, the spirit of giving has less to do with the material gifts and more to do with the sentiment behind them. Della and Jim's generosity towards each other is presented by their choice of gifts, which speak to the depth of their appreciation and love for each other. The narrator ends the story by stating that so long as people love truly and give generously, they will have given wisely. Now we move on to our next theme, that is sacrifice. So at the beginning of this story, Della and Jim have only two prized possessions, Della's hair and Jim's watch. In order to overcome their poverty and to give a good Christmas present to each other, he sacrifices the item that they value the most. The sacrifices turn out to have been made rather uselessly, since the gifts they buy cannot be used. One could argue that they ended their story in the same place they started out, Delacere and James Goldwatch, but the narrator suggests that they have added value to their relationship through generosity and sacrifice. The significance of the Magi is summed up in the last paragraph as the narrator compares Della and Jim to the Magi who invented the art of giving gifts, suggesting that the value of a gift lies in the intent, the level of generosity, and the sacrifice behind it rather than its material value. So at the end, we also see that quotation from the text. And here I have lamely related to you the uneventful chronicle of two foolish children in a flat, who most unwisely sacrificed for each other the greatest treasures of their house. But in a last word to the wise of these days, let it be said that of all who give gifts, these two are the wisest. Of all who give and receive gifts, such as they are wisest, everywhere they are the wisest, they are the Magi. So Jim and Dilla are called the Magi of the present time. So they have presented the gifts. Their intention was very high about themselves. Though they could not use the gifts, their love for them didn't decrease. Rather, their love for each other has increased to a great extent, we can say. Now we move on to another theme, that is wealth. We can see that their wealth, they didn't have much wealth, but they were happy. They had a great wealth of mind. And their material poverty contrasts with the richness of the love for one another, indicating that material possessions are not the only type of wealth. So their wealth lies in in their love for each other. And through their love, they have presented that love is the only spirit that drives all other problems in life. And through this, we can see that the power of love brings a lot of changes in the minds of the people. So from these themes, it is understood that the love, generosity, sacrifice, and the will of the two people have been expressed. And one of the important things that we find is that they are very much happy in their life in spite of their familial, their economic hardship. So if you go for the analysis of the text, we find that so it all happened because they wanted to give them a gift of wealth and generosity in the context of giving and receiving gifts. The title is a reference to the biblical Magi, often called the three wise men or the three kings who traveled to Bethlehem in order to pay tribute to the infant Jesus Christ. And we see that how they are happy in their life in spite of their economic bad condition, and we can see that they are happy in every place. Though biblical scholars continue to debate the specific symbolism of the Magi's gifts, they are commonly thought to represent Christ's dominion over the mortal and divine realms. As I have discussed earlier, that they brought gold, frankincense, and also myrrh. So these things also represent different things. And the gold represents the earthly wealth of kings. Frankincense represents the sacrifice Christ would make, and the myrrh represents his death after crucifixion. The gifts themselves are less important than what they represent as gestures. The Magi's gifts and their willingness to kneel before the newborn Christ is a recognition of his status as the King of the Jews and the Son of God. Though the narrator humorously dismisses Jim and Della's story as an uneventful chronicle of two foolish children, he praises their wisdom as being on with that biblical wise men. This suggests that the selfless love they display for one another through their sacrifice is more valuable than anything the money can buy. Building on the biblical connotations established by the title, The Gifts of the Magi takes the form of a parable or a short didactic tale designed to illustrate a moral or philosophical principle. Parables are common throughout the Bible as they are designed to impart a moral lesson to the reader. Jim and Della may be poor in terms of their material circumstances, but they are abundantly wealthy in matters of love and generosity. Henry remarks that a mathematician or wit would fail to recognize the value of Jim and Della's relationship, but he encourages readers to recognize just how rich they are. Ultimately, the story praises unconditional love, encouraging readers to give generously and to love selflessly. So, this is the idea that we get from this text. So, we move on to the last part of our discussion, that is the questions. The short questions: write short notes on Della's hair and James' gold watch, who are the Magi. Question number 3: describe Della's sad mood on the eve of Christmas. Question 4: discuss briefly the fate of Jim and Della. Broad questions: why are Jim and Della called the Magi of the present time? And how did Jim and Della prove their love for each other? So these are the questions for the exam. And we have so far discussed the definition of the short story. We have also made the discussion of the text. And finally, we have given the board questions for the students. And thank you all for attending or listening to this session. And hopefully, I'll be taking the next class. And in that class, you'll also get some more ideas. Till then, goodbye.